Who is Dr. Neo Cortex exactly? Let's talk about it. What's up guys, J.Bandicoot here, back with another video, and today we are asking the question, who is Dr. Neo Cortex? This is a new series of mine where I explore the backstory, motivations, plot points, and history of different characters in a game's universe, and I'm kicking it off with Crash Bandicoot's arch nemesis, old nailhead himself, Dr. Neo Cortex. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that this timeline will only include the main series games. Unfortunately, this list and history lesson will not include the Crash Racing titles, the Crash Party titles, or the Crash handheld titles, as the timelines of those games don't really seem to coincide with the canonical timeline. If you'd like to see a video featuring those particular timelines, please let me know, and I'll definitely look into making a video dedicated to those outings. But for right now, we're focusing on games that are canon in the Crash timeline that were released on home consoles. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. So in his youth, Dr. Neo Periwinkle Cortex, yeah that's right, his middle name canonically is Periwinkle, was the youngest child in a family of circus clowns. Now his motivations are really starting to make sense to me. However, Cortex really wasn't like the rest of his family. He didn't like to make people laugh or provide entertainment at all. He didn't even cash in on the entire YouTube craze and make billions of dollars like the Paul brothers did. That kind of life wasn't for little Neo. Instead, he preferred researching and acquiring intelligence to make him superior to those around him. He got his wish, as at the age of 6 he was enrolled in high school, where he met his lifelong best friend and lackey, Dr. Nitrous Brio. The duo's insatiable lust for knowledge made them prone to experiments gone wrong, and on one such occasion, one of these experiments demolished the high school that they attended and most of the surrounding area. The pair were then enrolled in Madame Amberly's Academy of Evil, where they met future world-conquering conspirator Engine. It was at this time that the trio began work on the Evolvo Ray, a ray capable of mutating living creatures. However, the initial tests proved the device to be incomplete, as it sent Cortex's pet parrots, Victor and Moritz, to an alternate dimension. It's also implied that before the events of the original Crash Bandicoot, that Cortex served in the Da Nang Air Force Base during the Vietnam War. After the war, Cortex continued his intellectual and scientific pursuits, only to find ridicule amongst his peers, despite his theories being clearly workable. It was due to this that Cortex vowed to silence his oppressors and opposers, and continued work on his Evolvo Ray to create an army of animals capable of taking over the world. He's really starting to sound like the Brain from Pinky and the Brain, but, you know, there's a lot of similarities there. It was during this time that Brio and Cortex became involved in some less than ethical business, and soon found themselves branded as international criminals. Desperate for an escape from the world's governments, the pair found a trio of islands secluded from the rest of the world in the middle of the ocean. These islands would later become known as Insanity Island and the surrounding area. Right before the events of Crash 1, Cortex and Brio completed construction on their finalized Evolvo Ray, and began running more tests on the native inhabitants. The testing from the Evolvo Ray created the characters we know as Tiny Tiger, the Komodo Brothers, Ripperoo, Pinstripe Potteroo, Koala Kong, Dingo Dial, Tawna Bandicoot, Coco Bandicoot, and finally, Crash Bandicoot, who was set to be the general of Cortex's army that he was going to dub his Cortex Commandos. Several successful attempts were run before attempting to create his general. However, during Crash Bandicoot's evolution, there was somewhat of a malfunction in the Evolvo Ray, making Crash come out, let's just say, less than adequate in the eyes of the Doctor. Crash then escapes from Cortex's castle, which leads Cortex to run further tests on Tawna Bandicoot. Crash, however, comes back to the castle and rescues Tawna before further damage can be done to his beloved side piece. After his defeat on his own blimp, Cortex falls into a cave that is also inhabited with the Master Power Crystal that he expects can aid him in his world-conquering goals. It's never specifically stated, but at some point during this time, Coco Bandicoot also manages to escape Cortex's testing chambers and unites with her brother Crash down on the island. I'm going to explore this point more in Who is Coco Bandicoot that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. Neo then regroups with Engine on his space station, and the pair construct the Cortex vortex, a mind control device that can brainwash any living being already evolved by the Evolvo Ray into doing Cortex's bidding. This in turn would subject Crash, Coco, and Tawna, as well as the entirety of his Cortex commandos, to Cortex's control. However, after construction on the Vortex is complete, the Doctor is informed by Engine that the Master Crystal needs the other 25 slave crystals on Earth in order for it to generate enough power to operate. Cortex's solution for this is to enlist the help of the dim-witted Bandicoot to collect the crystals for him. After seemingly having fooled Crash, Coco and Brio intervene and alert Crash to Cortex's plan, much to the dismay of the Doctor. He then comes to the realization that Brio has betrayed him, his lifelong friend, his best boy, his brother. How could he do such a thing? So, what's he do? He begins to threaten Crash into collecting the crystals for him, quite contrast to his previous demeanor in this outing. Crash continues to collect the remaining crystals and gems throughout the planet and assists Brio in destroying the Cortex Vortex and the space station. What a way to end a friendship. Blowing you up. That's just cold. Cortex then plummets to the Earth with the space station as a result of his defeat, which crashes into a set of ancient ruins that contain Uka Uka, the evil spirited mask who happens to be the twin brother of Aku Aku, Crash's protective mask. Uka Uka was hidden deep within the ruins' depths, and the impact from the space station hitting the ruins was enough to free him from his prison. Cortex had already been aware of the existence of Uka Uka up to this point, and he's been tentatively following his instruction, but is confronted for the first time by the evil mask face to face. It is together that they enlist the help of Dr. Nefarious Tropy, a time traveler who has constructed a time twister machine in efforts to collect power crystals throughout time. Cortex also enlists the help of some of his former associates from the Cortex Commando Army, everyone except Brio, Pinstripe, Ripperoo, Koala Kong, and the Komodo brothers make an appearance in helping to collect the crystals. However, Crash beats him to the punch and defeats him once more, along with his returning Cortex Commandos and Uka Uka in battle. The Time Twister machine then begins to malfunction and sends Tropy, Uka Uka, and Cortex back in time, turning them into little bitty babies. Cortex and Tropy were able to rectify this, however, and return to the present time after much time spent reliving their youth in the past. Cortex then holds a summit in a newly constructed space station with some members of his Cortex Commandos. You've got Uka Uka, Entropy, Tiny, Dingodile, and Engine all being present for this summit. The summit was meant to develop a plan to get rid of Crash Bandicoot. Simple enough, right? They create a plan that involves Cortex's secret weapon, which is what Crash should have been, a new general for Cortex's commandos who is now known as Crash Bandicoot. The band of villains then attempt to destroy Crash once and for all with the help of the elemental masks, giving Crunch the power of the elements for Crash to fight. However, Crash is able to defeat Crunch and free him of Cortex's mind control, foiling the plans of the evil Doctor once again. During this battle, a stray energy blast from Uka Uka hits the side of the space station, causing a critical overload. Cortex and Uka Uka then flee to the escape pods and escape down to Earth, where they land in the middle of Antarctica. The pair spend 3 years in an iceberg, 3 times as long as the Avatar, until they thaw back out on Insanity Beach without any ill side effects whatsoever. Man, I love fiction. Frustrated with his constant losses to that infernal Bandicoot, Cortex rounds up another villain summit and fools Crash into attending, thinking it's gonna be a birthday party. Man, what guy doesn't even know when his own birthday party is? Like, Crash, I love you to bits, but you're a little bit dim-witted. Crash defeats the villains again and infuriates Cortex. Cortex loses it and begins to fight Crash, and they begin a rolling fight throughout a cave system like you would see in the Looney Tunes. It's at the end of this cave system that the 2 parrots that Cortex had sent to an alternate dimension in his youth return as the evil twins hell-bent on destroying Cortex and the universe in which they live. Cortex has no choice but to team up with Crash and enlist the help of his niece, Nina, to thwart the evil twins. After traveling to the dimension in which he set the twins in the first place, Cortex and Crash defeat them along with their own invention, Evil Crash. The pair of Cortex and Crash's ceasefire ends, and Cortex attempts to dispose of Crash once and for all using the Psychotron, the device that allowed the evil twins to jump through dimensions. However, the device, of course, malfunctions, which sends Cortex stranded in Crash's mind. At some point in the future, Cortex was able to free himself of the absolute hell he was living inside the mind of Crash Bandicoot, and attempts to rid the world of him once again. He kidnaps Aku Aku and Coco and freezes Crunch and attempts to rid Crash of any sort of help. The Doctor's new plan is to steal a substance called Mojo from an ancient temple and use it to control an army of Titans, which will assist him in creating a robot hell-bent on destroying the world. That just sounds like slavery with extra steps, doesn't it? Cortex would never get the chance to watch his plan come to fruition, however, as Uka Uka has grown tired of Cortex's constant failings. He decides to replace Neo with Nina in hopes that she wouldn't be as big of a failure as her uncle. Crash, however, doesn't seem to care who he's defeating, as he defeats the robot and saves the world once again. Cortex then rescues Nina from the collapsing automaton and praises her for betraying him, citing it as the vilest thing she has ever done. Although, he was still going to spank her stupid for it. And I think that's my favorite line in the entirety of the Crash franchise. Cortex then drops Nina off at Evil Public School, which Cortex has bought with the money he earned doing something or other, as punishment for her betrayal. Cortex then enlists the help of Brio, who accepts the help of the Doctor once again with a tempting idea of world domination, and then invent the NV, a personal digital assistant that controls whoever uses it by transmitting negative mojo. Crash and Cortex find themselves fighting once again, this time inside of a giant head space station. This is amazing. Cortex and Brio built this thing, so it's like they have an affinity for space projects. During the fight, Cortex injects himself with Brio's original mutation formula. This is the same formula that Brio had tinkered with in Crash 1, which turned him into a Hulk-like creature. Upon losing to Crash once again, Cortex begins to throw a tantrum, which sends the space head crashing to Earth. By the way, bonus, if you take a shot every time I said Crash in this video, you're probably dead right now, and I'm so sorry. During this time, Cortex returns to normal and escapes the head via an escape pod. After this fight, it's unclear what happened to Cortex. Perhaps he gave up his dastardly ways and became a law-abiding citizen. Maybe he began work for NASA since he can construct space stations so well, or perhaps he did exactly what the epilogue of Crash Team Racing states he did, which is discover a new element on the periodic table and named it Cortex Rules the Worldium. A fitting end to a mad scientist super genius, if I do say so myself. So that was Dr. Neo Periwinkle Cortex, and now you know his entire history. Don't you feel better about yourself now? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out a ton, and while you're down there, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and the bell icon to stay up to date with the rest of my videos. Thanks again for watching, guys. It really does mean a lot to me, and until you see me next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace, my dudes and my dudettes, and go play some Neo Cortex, and I don't know, bang them with a hammer, boom!